Hello and a very warm welcome to everybody joining me for another installment of Inside SA Media, proudly brought to you by Tribox Media and Fact Fort. The world continues to stand up for press freedom and the safety of journalists. But this has not really made their lives any safer. On the contrary, those responsible for the deaths and threats to journalists continue to do so with impunity. This is according to Threats That Silence, a UNESCO study on developments in the safety of journalists. South Africa is one of the countries where journalists enjoy a high degree of media freedom without having to fear threats to their lives regularly. Nevertheless, though, they are not immune to other forms of harassment and bullying. Today we are talking about investigative journalism. It is the watchdog of democracy that uncovers corruption, injustice, and abuse of power. But what happens when these watchdogs are silenced? When intimidation, lawsuits, and violence attempts to suppress the truth? In South Africa, courageous journalists are fighting an ongoing battle to shed light on the dark corners of power. This episode reveals their stories, their struggles, and why this fight is far from over. Investigative journalism digs deep. We're talking long hours, secret sources, documents, and data. It forces transparency, but also demands accountability. And often it costs careers, safety, and sometimes lives. In South Africa, this role is vital. Starting from the apartheid era into democracy, journalists have held powerful figures to account, but not without resistance. Now, under apartheid, the media were heavily censored. Journalists who reported on resistance movements were harassed or worse. The state's propaganda machine silenced opposition voices. After 1994, however, many hoped for a new era of press freedom. But the legacy of fear and control didn't vanish overnight. Instead, journalists began facing new forms of pressure from political parties, business interests, and of course, the shadow of the state itself.
Let's bring you the story now. Former President Jacob Zuma's decision to serve News 24 journalist Karen Moore with a summons for private prosecution has come under heavy criticism from the media.
I believe that this is an extremely cynical and dangerous move by the former president to ask for a journalist to be imprisoned. In this country, you know, those are the kind of things that we kind of thought we put behind us when South Africa became a democracy in 1994. I think that this is really about targeting journalists. I think this is about harassing Karen, about intimidating and warning journalists like Karen to say, if you're going to report without fear or favor on this case, we're going to come for you.
I'm talking about those SLAPP suits, strategic lawsuits against public participation. These aren't ordinary defamation claims. They're lawsuits filed by wealthy individuals or companies, but not to win justice, but rather to drown journalists in legal fees, tie them up in court for years, and scare others into silence. Take, for instance, the story of the Moti Group. In 2023, Zunaid Moti's Moti Group filed an urgent interdict against amaBhungane after they published the Moti Files, a trove of leaked documents that was detailing corruption in Zimbabwe and politically connected deals. The court initially granted a gag order, forcing amaBhungane to take down the article and hand over the documents. After widespread backlash, a high court ruling overturned the interdict in 2023, stating the Moti Group had violated press freedom. A critical piece of investigative journalism was almost buried by a court order. But the ruling made it clear, journalists are not criminals for publishing the truth. Daily Maverick and independent media Daily Maverick reporters like Polly van Wyk have faced repeated threats of legal action after uncovering financial mismanagement and political influence in independent media owned by Iqbal Soov. In one instance, Iqbal and related companies threatened defamation lawsuits over Daily Maverick's reporting on misused PIC funds. These never went to court, but consumed newsroom time, legal resources, and they were seen as an attempt to intimidate through legal pressure. But in South Africa, courts are catching on. In a landmark 2021 Western Cape High Court ruling, the judge declared SLAPP suits a threat to public participation and said the courts must not be used to silence criticism. Judgments like these send a clear message that the courts are not weapons for the powerful to hide from scrutiny. Now, when it comes to the support systems for the media, behind every journalist that is fighting a SLAPP, there's often a network, pro bono lawyers, legal watchdogs, and a public that still values press freedom. The dangers go beyond the courts. There are physical threats, attacks, and even assassinations. These are the harsh realities. Journalists working on sensitive issues often receive death threats, are harassed, and suffer psychological trauma. This climate of fear not only threatens individuals, but also the survival of investigative journalism itself. Yet, despite everything, investigative journalism in South Africa endures. Networks like the Right to Know campaign, Press Freedom Commission, and organizations like Media Monitoring Africa stand firm. Awards like the Taco Kupia Prize celebrate courageous journalists who keep the watchdog alive. Digital tools, data journalism, and crowdsourced investigations help reporters stay ahead. But the fight is ongoing. Protecting press freedom is protecting democracy itself, because silencing the watchdog is silencing the people. Stay informed, support independent journalism, and raise your voice for press freedom. Thank you for watching this episode. We'll see you in the next one. From myself, Lungiswe Atyo on a chair, it's goodbye.